be some sleet mixed in there as well. This is not the heaviest precip, so that will also be something that sticking will have to overcome. But again, I think as we get a slight bit of more steadier precip into the overnight hours, say around 10, 11, midnight, that's when we'll probably pick up the totals that we're going to show you in a second. This shuts off pretty quickly by about 4 or 5 o'clock. Any kind of precip is starting to quiet down, and then we'll just be a little bit drizzly, and the dreary weather will continue as we head into tomorrow. 1 to 2 inches for most of northern Rhode Island, and as you get into southeast Mass, northern Bristol and Plymouth counties, you get south of that, we're only looking at a quick coating to a slushy inch at best. John, we'll have much more on the upcoming dreary week in 7-day in just a bit. Let's send it back to you.
All right, I think I want to hear that. All right, thank you, Jeff. Now to our team coverage of the New Hampshire presidential primary today. With a Democrat in the White House running for re-election, the headline today squarely belongs to the Republicans in the Granite State. Though her campaign is vowing to stay the course no matter what the results are today, this contest is considered something of a make or break moment for Nikki Haley as she looks to prove that she can compete with the clear frontrunner, Donald Trump. ABC 6 News anchor Tiffany Murphy is live in Nashville, New Hampshire for us this afternoon, tracking the pulse at the polls. Hi, Tiff.
Hey, John, how are you? Well, it is finally here from months of vicious attack ads, a whole lot of campaign stops in the Granite State. The day is here, all eyes on New Hampshire for the first in the nation GOP primary. Now, after a disappointing third place finish in Iowa, the Haley campaign doubling down in New Hampshire. There is a different beast than Iowa, though, where caucus voters there had to spend hours at the caucus rallying for their candidate, and they did so on the coldest day ever for a caucus with a negative 30-degree wind chill. None of those issues, though, are here today in New Hampshire, where voters simply walk in, cast their ballot, and then walk out. Now, it has been cold today. We've been outside since 4:30 this morning, just around the freezing mark, even just above, but really nothing out of the norm for the state. I spoke with Providence College political science professor Dr. Adam Myers, who says today's contest really is pivotal for Haley.
Big questions is how many unaffiliated voters are going to come to the polls, right? And who are they going to support?
Now, independent voters, unaffiliated voters, there are some 400,000 of those registered in the Granite State. They can vote today in the Republican primary, and that's really the toss-up. Where do those votes go? Dr. Myers says if Haley doesn't do well today, her chances of winning the Republican nomination for president are vastly diminished, if not, he says, actually at zero. Now, after Ron DeSantis dropped out of the race over the weekend, that leaves a whole lot of votes up for grabs. But Dr. Meyer doesn't believe those voters will support Haley. Her campaign, he says, has found ways to try and bring voters to her side. Well, today is New Hampshire's day, by the way. Obviously, we know that. Rhode Island officials are working very hard to get folks registered in the Ocean State for Super Tuesday, which is just around the corner. The voting record in Rhode Island, Trump actually did very well in the last election in the Ocean State.
If you think back to 2016, Trump did surprisingly well here. He did better in 2016 than any previous Republican presidential candidate since Ronald Reagan in 1984, right? So there are, as it turns out, a lot of Trumpy voters in Rhode Island. Now, are there enough for him to win this state? No, right? I don't think that there's any doubt that Rhode Island's 4 electoral votes in November are going to go to President Biden.
We are in New Hampshire today, where those 22 delegate votes are up for grabs. That's just a tiny portion of the 1,215 delegates needed to clinch the nomination, but it does all add up. So every election season, we obviously hear that every vote matters. Here is why this is so important. Just this week, the Attorney General's office and the Biden administration said that there was a spoof call going out to New Hampshire voters with President Biden's voice, but it was actually artificial intelligence, and it sounded a whole lot like his voice, though. And it actually told voters not to come out and waste their vote today. Take a listen.
fake images and misinformation can be exacerbated by emerging technologies, and that's why this president has directed the Department of Commerce through the AI Safety Institute at NIST to help develop clear watermarking and content standards.
Now, speaking of the Biden camp, a lot of polls show that Biden is actually trailing behind former President Donald Trump in a lot of battleground states. But here's the thing. Biden's team believes that is simply due to the fact that Democrats don't believe that Trump is a viable option to be on the ticket and could be a viable candidate. Here's what Dr. Myers had to say about that.
But once they do internalize that, once it's official, right? And once they see all these images of him standing trial, in these various court cases that he has in front of him this year, and certainly if he's convicted in any of these trials, right? The Biden campaign believes that the political dynamics will change dramatically. And so once voters understand that it's a two-person race and it's not just Biden against somebody else, it's Biden against Trump with all of his flaws, the Biden campaign thinks the poll numbers will shift.
Okay, so back to former President Donald Trump. His team is adding the finishing touches on the Grand Ballroom today at the Nashua Sheraton, where they are hosting his watch party. Alyssa and myself will be there. We've seen the Secret Service, a huge police presence. We've seen bomb-sniffing dogs all around the Sheraton where this event is taking place tonight. Now, we spoke with voters leaving the polls all throughout today. A majority of those voters that we spoke with told us that on their ballot today, they voted for Trump. A woman who lives in New Hampshire, is a teacher, and plans to retire very soon, says she is adamant that Trump needs to be back in office. Take a listen.
Good luck, Joe. He's not going to do it. He's proven himself too. And if people would just wake up, they would see that he is not for us. He's ruining our country. We're not going to have a country. So he's not going to make it.
And I'm here with ABC 6 News anchor Alyssa Azar. Alyssa and I have been outside all day, and you spoke with even more voters today, Alyssa.
That's right, we did. We've been here since before 6 this morning when the polls opened at 6 o'clock. It's been a steady stream of voters since. And when it comes to who those voters are voting for, it's been a mixed bag, but overwhelmingly residents here in Nashua tell us they're voting for Donald Trump. Some Democrats and independents coming to the polls today, voting either Republican or for President Joe Biden. Although Biden's name won't actually appear in the ballot, people are able to write in his name. This stems from a dispute between National Democrats and the state party in New Hampshire over which state should boast the first in the nation Democratic primary. We spoke to plenty of voters who were up bright and early this morning. Here's what some of them had to say.
Trump, all the way. He's already proven himself. We were in a much better situation 4 years ago. I'm getting ready to retire, and I'm not doing so well. We would have had raises and everything else if Trump was still in office.
I'm going to write in Joe Biden.
Okay, and how come?
I think in terms of the options we have so far, it's probably the safest bet.
I voted for Nikki Haley this time. I just don't think Trump should be president of the country, right? And so it's a way to stop that from getting too far.
Now we expect that steady stream of voters that hopefully you can get a peek of behind me. They've really been coming in steadily, and more of them now in the later hours. And we'll continue to follow this as the voting goes on until about 8 o'clock tonight. That's when the polls close. Hopefully we will have some results shortly after that. John, back to you in the studio.
Alyssa, Tiffany, thank you. Stay with ABC 6 News for live continuing coverage as results do start to roll in this evening for the New Hampshire primary. We will bring you those updates on air and across all of our social media platforms, abc6.com, and our Now local news app. New at 4, commuters cringing last night after RIDOT's director admitted work on the westbound side of the Washington Bridge could take more than the anticipated 3 months. Director Alviti said the state is considering a few options at this point and waiting for engineers to